You're sitting at your kitchen table, scrolling through reviews for a brand new laptop. Your current computer is getting slow, the battery barely lasts an hour, and you finally decided it's time for an upgrade. After comparing dozens of options, you find the perfect one. It's fast, it's affordable, the reviews are excellent. You click the purchase button expecting to check out and move on with your day. Instead, a message appears on the screen. This product is currently unavailable in your region. At first, you think it's a website error. Maybe the seller is temporarily out of stock. Maybe the page hasn't updated correctly. But then you search another retailer. Same result. Then another. Again, the same message. Suddenly you realize something bigger is happening. Over the past few weeks, stories like this have been appearing across technology forums, news websites, and social media. People are discovering that certain electronics are becoming harder to find, and many consumers are confused about why. Some articles blame manufacturers. Others point fingers at supply chain issues. A few suggest it's related to international trade policies. The truth is a lot simpler than the headlines make it sound. In today's video, we're going to break down exactly what's happening, why government regulators became involved, and what these changes could mean for everyday consumers over the next few years. More importantly, we're going to separate facts from rumors. Because whenever major changes affect technology products, misinformation spreads incredibly fast. And if you're planning to buy a computer, networking device, smart home gadget, or other electronics in the future, understanding these changes could save you money and frustration later. So before you rush out to buy anything, or panic because of something you read online, let's start with the basics and look at what actually changed behind the scenes. Before we talk about the impact, it's important to understand who's making these decisions in the first place. Most people don't spend much time thinking about the agencies that regulate technology. After all, when your internet works, your laptop turns on, and your phone connects to Wi-Fi, there's really no reason to. But behind every electronic device sold in the country, there are rules and approval processes designed to ensure those products meet certain standards. Think of it this way. When you buy a new car, there are safety regulations that manufacturers must follow before that vehicle can legally be sold. Technology products go through something very similar. Certain government agencies are responsible for reviewing communication devices, networking equipment, wireless hardware, and other electronics before they reach consumers. For years, this process happened mostly in the background. Manufacturers submitted products, regulators reviewed them, products received approval, consumers bought them. Simple. But recently, regulators began taking a closer look at where some of these products are made, how they're assembled, and what components are being used inside them. That shift has sparked a major conversation throughout the technology industry. The reason is straightforward. Modern electronics are no longer simple devices performing a single task. Today's gadgets are connected to the internet. They communicate with cloud services. They store personal information. They exchange data constantly. Because of that, regulators increasingly view technology products as part of a larger digital infrastructure rather than just consumer goods. And when something becomes part of critical infrastructure, governments tend to pay much closer attention. This doesn't mean your current devices are suddenly unsafe. It doesn't mean products are being remotely disabled. And it certainly doesn't mean consumers need to panic. What it does mean is that future products may face additional requirements before they can enter the market. Those requirements may seem invisible to the average shopper, but they can dramatically influence what products become available, how quickly they arrive, and ultimately how much they cost. And that leads us to the biggest question of all. Why are officials suddenly paying so much attention to these devices now? To understand why regulators are becoming more involved, you have to look at how connected our lives have become. A decade ago, most households had a few internet-connected devices, maybe a desktop computer, a laptop, a smartphone. That was about it. Today, the average home can have dozens of connected devices operating simultaneously. Smart TVs stream entertainment around the clock. Video doorbells monitor front entrances. Security cameras record activity day and night. Voice assistants answer questions, control lights, and manage schedules. Even refrigerators, thermostats, and washing machines can connect to the internet. What many people don't realize is that all of these devices rely on a network to communicate. And at the center of that network sits a critical piece of technology. The equipment that manages traffic, connects devices, and acts as the gateway between your home and the internet. Because of its position, that equipment handles an enormous amount of information every single day. It sees where data comes from. It sees where data is going. It helps route communications between countless devices. That's exactly why cybersecurity experts pay so much attention to it. If a vulnerability exists in a widely used piece of networking equipment, the impact can extend far beyond a single household. A weakness affecting thousands or even millions of devices can become an attractive target for cyber criminals, organized hacking groups, or even foreign intelligence operations. Now, it's important to keep this discussion realistic. The vast majority of technology products are designed and sold by legitimate companies that invest heavily in security. However, regulators often focus on worst-case scenarios rather than everyday outcomes. Their job is not simply to react after a problem occurs. Their job is to reduce risks before they become widespread. That's the thinking driving many of these recent policy changes. Officials argue that greater oversight can reduce potential vulnerabilities and strengthen long-term digital security. Supporters see it as proactive protection. Critics see it as unnecessary government interference. And regardless of which side people support, one thing is undeniable. The technology industry is now being forced to adapt. And those changes are creating challenges that manufacturers never expected to face. At first glance, some people might think the solution is simple. If new regulations create restrictions, manufacturers can just move production somewhere else and continue business as usual. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. Modern technology products are built through incredibly complex global supply chains. A single device might be designed in one country, use processors from another, memory chips from somewhere else, and then be assembled in an entirely different region before reaching store shelves. This system didn't develop overnight. Companies spent decades building manufacturing networks that allowed them to produce products efficiently and at competitive prices. As a result, many technology brands depend heavily on facilities and suppliers spread across multiple countries. When regulations suddenly change, manufacturers can't simply flip a switch and relocate everything. Building new factories takes years. Training workers takes time. Establishing relationships with new suppliers can be expensive and complicated. Even after a company decides to make changes, there are countless logistical challenges that must be solved before production can operate smoothly. And during that transition period, uncertainty becomes a major issue. Businesses don't like uncertainty. Investors don't like uncertainty. Consumers definitely don't like uncertainty. Companies must decide whether it's worth investing billions of dollars into new production facilities, redesigning products, modifying supply chains, or seeking special approvals that allow them to continue selling certain products. Some manufacturers may adapt quickly. Others may delay product launches while they evaluate their options. A few could decide that certain products are no longer profitable under the new rules. That's where the real impact begins to spread throughout the industry. Because when manufacturers face higher costs, longer timelines, and additional regulatory requirements, those pressures rarely stay behind the scenes. Eventually, they reach retailers, then distributors, and finally, consumers. The result isn't always dramatic overnight change. More often, it happens gradually. Fewer product launches, longer wait times, reduced competition, and sometimes higher prices. Which brings us to the question most consumers care about most. How will these changes affect the products you buy and the amount of money you spend in the years ahead? From a consumer perspective, most of this might feel distant at first. You still open your laptop. You still connect to Wi-Fi. You still stream videos, browse websites, and use apps like normal. On the surface, nothing changes. But the real impact of these kinds of regulatory shifts usually shows up in a few subtle ways over time. The first and most noticeable change is pricing. When manufacturers face higher production costs, those costs rarely stay absorbed by the company for long, and they tend to get passed along to the consumer. That means devices like routers, laptops, and other networking equipment could gradually become more expensive over time rather than cheaper or staying stable. The second change is availability. If certain products require additional approvals or changes to their design or manufacturing process, some models may take longer to reach the market. In some cases, companies may even decide not to release certain versions in specific regions at all. That leads to fewer options for shoppers, especially when it comes to budget-friendly devices or niche models. The third change is innovation speed. Technology companies typically compete by releasing faster, better, and more efficient products every year. But when regulatory requirements become more complex, product development can slow down. Instead of focusing purely on performance improvements, companies also have to focus on compliance, documentation, and manufacturing adjustments. That doesn't stop innovation completely, but it can slow the pace at which new devices appear on shelves. For most everyday users, these changes won't cause immediate disruption. Your current devices will continue working normally. There is no sudden shutdown or forced replacement happening. The effects are gradual, not instant. But over the next few years, you may start noticing that upgrading your home technology isn't quite as simple or as affordable as it used to be. And that leads to the most practical question: what should you actually do about all of this right now? So, after hearing all of this, the most important question is simple. What should you actually do? The short answer is nothing drastic. If your current router, laptop, phone, or any other device is working fine, there's no reason to replace it immediately. Nothing is being shut off, and no existing equipment is suddenly becoming unusable. In fact, most of the changes being discussed only apply to future products entering the market. That means anything you already own continues to function exactly as it does today. Where this becomes more relevant is in timing. If you are already planning to upgrade your home network, replace an aging router, or buy new tech in the near future, it may make sense to pay attention to current availability and pricing. Because once supply chains adjust and manufacturers respond to new regulations, the market could shift in ways that are harder to predict. That doesn't necessarily mean you should rush out and buy everything immediately. Panic buying usually leads to unnecessary spending. Instead, the smarter approach is awareness. Know what you're buying, compare your options, and make decisions based on need rather than fear. Over time, the technology industry will adjust, companies will adapt their manufacturing strategies, governments will refine regulations, and the market will stabilize again. That's how these cycles usually work. There is always a period of confusion, followed by adjustment, and eventually a new normal. So while headlines might make things sound dramatic, the real-world impact for most consumers is much more gradual and manageable. The key takeaway is this: you're not being cut off from technology. You're not losing access to devices. You're simply watching an industry go through another phase of change. And like most changes in tech, it will eventually settle into something new, familiar, and stable again. If anything, the most important thing you can do is stay informed, because informed decisions are always better than reactive ones.